Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the All Access Pass on the Check the Score podcast, where we interview and speak to people who play a major role in the sports industry. Today, I'm joined by one of my favorite people in the sports media space, trailblazing what it means to be a cross-code presenter and not being pigeonholed in one sport. It's Haddad. How are you?
Oh my goodness, what an intro.
Yes, I think I felt it was appropriate.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. We've met a number of times.
Yes.
We've I guess my most fond memory is where you interviewed me for one of your assignments.
Yeah, that was all over Zoom, and that even came around. That was, I was equally as nervous, could you say?
But I know you did a great job, and then we ran into each other a few times at the Women's World Cup, and then I think at
Steelers, when I was working at the Steelers, and you're at the New South Wales Cup final.
Yeah, that's the one. So yeah, we've run into each other a few times, but it's nice to be back in a bit of an interview format with you. So
yeah, of course, absolutely. Your career is one that obviously I say that I like the idea that you can kind of go in and out of different sports and not be pigeonholed. And there's obviously a long journey to get here. I could go on, but the first thing that I want to ask you is what day did it just click that you're like, yeah, this is it. I want to kind of go down this path.
I guess it started first with the football side of things, and I studied media and communications at uni, and I always had the intention of going into radio or using my broadcast experience for something. But as it happens, I came from a family of marketing people, advertising people, sales people. So a very natural step for me after uni was going into sales. So I found myself at Nova, the radio station, working in kind of an entry-level sales job. And it's very easy to fall into the trap of, I call it a trap because if it's not truly what you want, it is kind of easy just to end up in a role like that. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that either. But I think for me, I hit the point after about 2.5 years of doing that job and working in that industry of just knowing I'm definitely in the right area, but I'm not doing what I want to do. And I think for me, I lost that passion for sport a little bit whilst I was trying to really make a name for myself and do a good job of my first corporate job and all that stuff. And I think everyone can relate to some extent that when you are really devoting yourself to some kind of job, you can lose yourself a little bit, or you're not spending as much time on your hobbies and whatnot. But anyway, there was a moment, and I don't actually remember exactly when it was, but where I just decided I don't want to do this anymore. I don't see a future at this company in the direction that I'm going. So what's next? And I thought, well, moving to Europe would be amazing, and collecting all of that experience and going and doing those things for the first time. So I broke the news to my parents, and then they were like, now you've told us, you've got to go do it. So I will always say thank you to them for backing that decision. But it was basically that. So that moment of just knowing that I wasn't really going to end up where I wanted to be if I stayed in the job that I was in. So I needed to change something, and moving overseas was that for me. And then that was kind of the snowball that led to, I guess, the wild journey that I went on after that.
Yeah, and I think you've told me briefly about obviously you moving to Spain prior, but then obviously you were kind of documenting your journeys over there, and I feel like that is almost like the spark that lit the flame.
Yeah, definitely.
Moving into at least the football industry, especially.
Yeah. You can. If you know how you like to express yourself the most, whether it's, some people love to express themselves through music, others it's through words or recording themselves in this kind of format. I just knew that I needed some way to express the journey that I was on. Yeah. And it was 2019. So it was kind of a bit before the TikTok world. I definitely could have used TikTok. If it was now, I could have been doing daily vlogs. I could have been talking about those experiences via TikTok, but I didn't really have a platform on social media like that. So I created one for myself, which was my blog. And naturally I started telling those stories, and I really enjoyed using my words. But that transitioned then into using audio, because I think I love the camera. I love creating content in that sense. So It started with the words, and then it grew.
Yeah. And one of your quotes, obviously going to the blog, one of the quotes I've heard you say on a podcast previously is that you talk about writing a blog and making a podcast that no one listened to. How do you kind of channel that and be like, all right, well, I know I need to do this, and this, and now obviously get to the stage where you're at and doing freelance content for, you know?
It's a tough one because we definitely live in a world where everybody wants to see immediate success, or they want to see crazy numbers because numbers correlate with success. I think for me, I saw it as a platform. I saw it as a portfolio more than anything, so that if somebody one day was to stumble across my work, they could see that I had put in effort and time on these things, and that it was a true passion. There was no intention there just behind building an audience of people. I really wanted to create stuff that I resonated with, and stuff that I would also want to consume.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think there's anything wrong with going out on social media with the intention of building a platform. But I think for me personally, I was more concerned with knowing that I wanted to work in this space, but I didn't have any evidence of what I was capable of. So I saw each interview and each moment as an opportunity to build a portfolio so that people could say, oh, Kat can do these things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I just didn't concern myself too much with numbers initially. And that was advice from people who I looked up to, who just said, you just need to start, and the audience isn't going to come straight away unless you already have an audience.
Yeah, for sure.
In which case you're obviously transitioning. But for me, it was literally starting from zero. So my audience were my best friends who did not care about the sport, but they would support me nonetheless. And I think even looking back and reflecting on that, it means even more.
Yeah, for sure. And then obviously that kind of led into the whole podcasting world. And I think the big turning point, at least when I look at it, is when you obviously transition into Optus. But first, before that, probably was the I Want It Yesterday network and working with those guys. How was that kind of experience? Like when you kind of look at it, how it obviously started and the relationship you still have with some of the people that are still working there.
Oh my gosh, it was the best. That was such a fun time. So I had moved back to Sydney at that point, and I was working for Acast, which is a big podcasting company. And they had studios in the office. And they said, Kat, if you ever want to just start creating content, have your own podcast show, go for it. And I thought, you know what? Absolutely, I will. So I would stay back late on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday night after work. And this was also before we were in the office every day, which is a foreign concept now. But I would just arrange interviews with different people. And I started churning that content out by Zoom. So it was terrible. Obviously, I had a roadcaster, but it was all through Zoom. It wasn't a great setup.
Yeah.
But it was enough. So I started posting some of that on social media, and it was Claude's who actually came across my stuff. And we had a conversation, and he was just trying to network with different people, especially females, I think, because there weren't many in the space at the time. So he was like, let's meet, come into the studio, come meet me and my brother. So I go in, and then in doing that, we created this connection, and we got along really well. And, Marcello, who was also still works, obviously, as one of the co-founders, and he's kind of more behind the scenes. We see a lot of Claude's in the content. Chels is running the show behind the scenes. And they actually were really trying to expand their podcast offering. So we started talking more business. It wasn't even like, hey, do you want to jump into some content? It was like, what is your thoughts on podcast strategy and this and that? And
yeah, wow.
Yeah, so there was a period of time where I thought I might actually move over and start working for them on the podcast side of things. But it didn't happen like that. In the end, Claude's pitched this show idea to Olan Techers and myself and said, I think the three of us should come together. There's with a football show. There's nothing in the market like it. And we started thinking of names, and we were meeting, every week on Zoom and chatting through it. And then eventually the Born Offside show was born.
Yeah.
And the three of us, we did a pilot episode. We got along really well. There was great chemistry from the get-go. And yeah, as you said, it was kind of the start of everything. So through the Born Offside show, started getting a little bit of other work. And I had a pre-existing relationship with Optus Sport. I'd actually met them before I moved to Spain, I'd gone in and said, I want to work here one day. What do I need to do? And it was Rich Bayless, who was kind of the head producer and running the show there at the time. He had said to me, well, find something that you're good at and do it. And that's a way to start showing your skills to people. And that's why I started the blog. So it was a big full circle moment the day that I got that first job from
Yeah.
Optus Sport, because I thought this really did stem from me just doing what Rich said, which was finding a way to express myself and doing it. And then you see how each step takes you to where you are now. So yeah, the Born Offside show was a lot of fun. We interviewed great people. We had a lot of fun with each other. I was talking to Olan Tekers on the phone today. Like, the relationships are still really strong. Obviously, the show itself doesn't exist anymore, but never say never. We may come back in a different format one day. But yeah, it was definitely the start of where we are now.
Yeah, I've told you previously that I want to see that come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We get messages a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine. But even like other guys that you collab with, like obviously you have Kat, like Sasso as well,
Yeah.
and Lav, and even Nick Stav to an extent. Like like all those.
We considered Nick Stav our unofficial fourth member of the group. We did, because whenever one of us was sick, Nick Stav was the first guy we would call.
Yeah, well, obviously he's pretty heavy in the football content scene. Obviously kind of not so officially with like Optus Sports, say, but it's more definitely huge on social media, particularly TikTok.
Oh yeah, he's if you have a video with Nick Stav, it will blow up. It doesn't matter. I think one time I was just buying food and I filmed him and the video went viral, and I thought, is it really that simple?
My favorite Nick Stav cameo is him on AFTV. That was hilarious.
Oh my goodness. Is that not just like dream content?
Well, especially as an Arsenal fan, right?
Like, I know.
The way,
I know.
Yeah, like obviously that's almost like the pinnacle of Arsenal content is like getting, Don Robbie, the interview after a game at the Emirates. Like,
I know. And the thing, I adore Nick Stav. I see him like a little brother, and I love watching him grow in this space.
Yeah.
And every time I see him with a microphone in his hand or I see him delivering content, he's such a natural. And I truly believe that the world is his oyster in this space. I think he could do so much with it. So I think he's a journey that you wanna watch, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And when we talk about collaborating with those people, do you think a lot of the influences and the way that they go about their business is almost rubbed off? Like,
yeah, you learn something from everyone that you work with.
Yeah.
And I think Claude's was really one of the first to really push that idea of collaboration. It's something you see a lot in rugby league, right? And I see a lot of this in the content space. Like, even the fact that Bloke in a Bar, the Monday show, is literally it's Den and Kemp, but then it's also Rugby League Guru and it's Tim Williams, and it's all about collaborating with different creators who can bring something else to the table. I think you see a lot of that in rugby league, but on the football side of things, you didn't see much of that. It's a lot of individual creators just doing their thing. And I think Claude's was the first to say, we really need to do something in this space and like use all of our brains and use all of our creativity to create something. And so obviously Born Offside kind of had that concept in itself. But then the SBS, the World Cup show that we did, it was really about getting lots of different people involved and using them to their strengths.
Yeah.
So I love long form storytelling and that kind of stuff. Other people are really good at vox pops and being out on the street and asking questions. And so finding creators who were good at those things and utilizing them, and instead of competing for jobs, create the jobs.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like the podcasting industry is such at least in 2025, such a saturated space. So it's obviously, when you get great minds come together, I think it's important that, you can make those things sort of happen, and at least on a successful.
Yeah. It's very saturated and it's hard to stand out. But when you do meet people that you resonate with or that you have similar values and I guess they make you better at your work, why wouldn't you want to work with them? And I think for Claude's and Olan's specifically, in my experience, they did that for me. They made me feel more confident about my knowledge. They gave me a platform to speak where in the past I might have felt, oh, this isn't my place. And yes, I copped hate, but that's just the nature of it. And I think that's a whole other conversation, is that with that comes people disagreeing with you or thinking how did you get this platform? Like, I want to be doing that. And
Yeah,
you
for
do
sure.
see a lot of that in the, like, that is ultimately the motivation behind hate comments, is it's just jealousy. But yeah, no, I don't think I would be where I am now if I hadn't collaborated and if I hadn't worked with people who brought out that confidence in
Yeah,
me.
for sure. And if any of those people that we mentioned want to come on, hey,
Yeah.
there's a door open there. You mentioned obviously Guru and the Bloke in the Bar podcast. Obviously, that's all exploded, especially in the last, like,
Huge.
probably post COVID. I feel like that path of work for you and that natural segue into rugby league and what you're doing now is what probably most people will know you for, at least in Australia. But when that comes to that, and obviously you're working on the Let's Trot podcast as well, how did all that sort of stuff come about?
So funny. It's another one of those full circle moments. So post Women's World Cup, I think there was this reality check for people like myself. For context, I had left my full-time job and I'd gone freelance, and there was so much work in and around the Women's World Cup. So in the lead up, Optus was sending me to Auckland to do the draw, and then the like the just a bunch of games, and there was just so much work. And then I was doing the show 100 days till the Women's World Cup, and boom, boom, boom. Before you know it, Women's World Cup, and then you're basically in tournament mode for 40 something days. And there's, like I said, a lot of work. But then as soon as the tournament ends, and I think this is just the reality of the football world in Australia, is when it's on, but when it's not on, it's so off.
It is really hot and cold.
We forget about it. And so to have a career based solely on football at that time was really challenging, unless you've already got a broadcast role or something like that. So for me, I said the best thing for me to do right now is to try and integrate some rugby league content into what I do. And that's because I'm passionate about the sport. I could argue that I know more about it, especially now working with Guru. I think my knowledge has surpassed what I know in the football world, which is insane. But I
Really?
think that's a testament to working with someone who is such an expert. And also, it's the world in that you're in it. It's based here. You can go to games, you can create relationships with teams and players, and so that changes the game as well. But anyway, I decided to transition into rugby league, and the timing was pretty insane. So the Let's Trot show came about through I Want It Yesterday, and obviously they knew that I love league, and I love working with Josh Mansell. He's just brilliant. So they got me on board to help produce the first kind of 11 or 12 episodes of Let's Trot. And so we obviously formulated the concept, what's it going to look like, and then where's it going to go. So I was on board for the first bunch of episodes. And then I got a call from Rugby League Guru. So Nathan is actually his government name.
Yeah, I was
which
gonna
is
say, you
crazy.
dropped the government name.
I know. Whenever I drop his government name, people are like, sorry, who's that? I'm like, I know, it's crazy. His mother didn't call him Guru.
It's so funny that when I met you and Guru at
Yeah.
the New South Wales Cup final, I remember you like, oh, and this is Guru. Oh, no, I mean,
Yeah,
Nathan. It was like,
exactly. Oh, it's a daily struggle, really. And sometimes on the episodes, I want to be like, Nathan. And then I'm like, say that.
bite your tongue.
Yeah, I got to bite my tongue. So when I worked at Acast in the sales role, Nathan, Rugby League Guru, was part of the network. And so, funnily enough, I was responsible for a few campaigns that he had. And I would call him up and say, hey, Nathan, we've sold, a deal for Sportsbet, or we've sold to Mosh or whatever. This is what the campaign looks like. We need you to do your host reads, blah, blah, blah. But in and around those phone calls, we'd always have a bit of a chat about footy, and he'd always be like, oh, what are you up to? And I'd say, oh, I'm doing this for Optus Sport or whatever. So when the day came that I resigned from Optus Sport, he was from Optus Sport, from Acast, I actually called him and I broke the news to him. And he was like devastated, because he would call me all the time with every question he had about the advertising world, because it is a different world to me, and
sure.
he has a teaching background, and so there was a lot to learn in terms of how to pull a campaign together. But I said to him, or he kind of alluded to, oh, maybe one day, there'll be an opportunity in league or whatever. we will stay in touch. So then a year and a half later, it's like December 2023. And Nathan and I start talking, and he's like, look, I've got my own studio now. I really want to get a producer on board. And I'd love it to be you, or he had another person that he was talking to. Would you want to do it? And I was like, this is perfect because I needed the work. I wanted to transition into rugby league. I've got this relationship with him already, so it's very comfortable, and it's an opportunity to do something a bit more behind the scenes as well and build a bit of confidence in the space.
Yeah.
Because I think the reality too is I've come from a football background, so you need to gain a bit of credibility, but then also talking about it myself. Like I haven't had to do that in these formats at all. So anyway, I said yes, and then end of January we started, and I came on board, and it was amazing. So started working 3 days a week with him, and then essentially I just had my first season with him. So this is my second season. We've got a brand new studio. Like in the mix of my first season, we moved studios. I think we've got a really great dynamic, and I really enjoy co-hosting content and bouncing off him in conversations and helping him with content. And we've done heaps of travel. We went to Vegas. We've done all of these things. So
I was going to get into that.
yeah, well, feel free to. But yeah, that's essentially. Sorry, keep
No, it's
hitting the
all-
mic. You'd
no, it's
think
all
I'd know better. But that's how it all started. So it was a pre-existing relationship, and then the timing just worked out really well. That once I'd done those first kind of episodes with Let's Trot, I got the call from Guru, and I came on board.
Yeah. And obviously, I think that's probably might be the biggest step that you guys have taken with going to Vegas in round one.
Yeah.
When I saw, well, you told me personally that you were going there, I'm like,
Yeah.
well, like
Yeah.
the content's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
How was that whole experience?
It was surreal.
Is it your first time in the US?
No. I've got a lot of family in the US and in
right.
Canada. So I've done a lot of US trips, but I'd never gone for like a sports related thing before. And I've been to a few NBA games and a few ice hockey games over there. So I know they're good at live sport, but it was so cool to see it with a rugby league kind of veil over it. So Nath had gone the first year, which was last year, and I was at home and I edited a few things for him here and there, but it was a one-man show last year. And he had said, if I have the capacity to take you over next year, I will. And then on top of that, if we could take a videographer, it would be even better because the quality of the content and all that jazz. So as it turned out, he had the capacity to. So halfway through last year, we started having those conversations and then booked everything, and we applied for media accreditation so we could get where we wanted to, get into the good spots. And then obviously when they announced the teams, we made sure that, well, we've got a good relationship with the Warriors and their media team. So they made sure that we knew where they were and what they were doing. And yeah, it was great. So like I said, it was surreal, I think, to go that far away and then be bumping into people that you know and seeing like a Cronulla Sharks jersey on the street. The strip is just, it's so whack. But it was a really cool experience. We worked our butts off, honestly. And I think it's the reality too of traveling with the purpose of creating content is people were like, oh, did you party? Did you do this and that? And I was like, I didn't even party in Sydney. All I wanted to do was a good job of the content, make sure that people felt like they got to experience it with us. That was my main goal. So yeah, it was surreal, I think, is the best way to sum it up.
Yeah. And even me, like on a, oh, this is really loud. Even me on like a smaller scale, me and my mates went to like a UFC press conference, and I'm like trying to get content, and they're like just enjoying themselves, and I'm like,
it's a different
trying to balance it. Like even I'm going magic around, so like
I'll see you there.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, do I get content? Do I like do what most young guys do on magic round? You know what I mean? So it's like
it's a tough spot. I think it's the one thing that I do feel, if there had to be a negative in the job, which there really isn't, like I love what I do, but if there was a negative, it's that there's a sense of guilt going to any sport event and not creating content around it. But I do it. I still go. I don't ever want to resent those experiences by forcing myself to
Yeah.
create content or do this and that. It's different if it's paid or if you've built all this hype and then don't show anything. I mean, that's kind of wild. And you wouldn't go all the way to Vegas and not share the experience.
Yeah.
But I still go to the odd like Bunnies game or
Yeah.
I go to lots of A-League games
Yeah.
and I don't post much about it because I still want to enjoy it.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the best examples that I can think of is Winston, like we've talked about
Yeah.
previously. He's kind of adapted his content to be more strict podcasts on the YouTube and then game day TikToks rather than
Yeah.
doing the whole vlog. And
So good.
because I remember going to a game with him once and he's just like videoing the entire thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, like you don't even
It's
get to enjoy the game. Like,
It's tiring. And I think someone like Winston too, he's so young. And if he wants it to be sustainable, you've got to find a format that works for you that still allows you to enjoy. And like I think, for me, that might mean every now and again, a game is just about content. So if it's a sponsored TikTok or Instagram reel or it's a vlogging experience, then by all means you're gonna go and you're gonna make the most of it. But sometimes it's okay to just go and you don't even have to post the story that you're there. You're allowed to just enjoy the game like you would have
yeah,
in the past. But I think Winston, it's good that he's found something more sustainable for him
yeah, for
because
sure.
yeah, the vlogging is a lot of work. And there's a lot of success in vlogging too. I mean, people love that format. I love watching vlogs. I'm a huge YouTuber. Like I just spend so much time on YouTube. Like Spanian is like my guy.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I could actually commit to that level of content and filming.
Yeah, for sure. Um, and another thing with Guru, I think one thing that, in my opinion, has even elevated the show more this year is getting someone like Jamie Soward on board.
Oh, absolutely.
Funnily enough, my first ever interview with a talent ever for a
Yeah.
university assignment was Jamie Soward.
No way.
Yeah, I interviewed him because I wrote a story about State of Origin, and he technically made one appearance for the
Yeah.
Blues. So I literally just shot him a DM and he's like, yep,
great.
no worries. He's just like, yep, just over the phone. I recorded it on like through my computer. Beautiful.
Jamie Soward is the perfect example of a player, but also a fan of the game. And his knowledge is so extensive. I learn, when I talk about how my knowledge has increased in such a short period of time, the show between Guru and Sowie, where I feel like a sideline reporter, they only bring me in, for like the most irrelevant stuff. It's not that I can't say anything. I just get swept up in the conversation. I love listening to it and they're both so knowledgeable. And I think Sowie, there's someone made a really good point. I can't remember who it was. It might have been Guru, but I think these days players don't want to look like fans of the game, right? They want to be taken, and by all means, like as they should be, taken seriously as athletes and not seen as like fanboys of rugby league.
Yeah, for
Which
sure.
I think it's fair if that's what you want. But I also don't think there is anything wrong with being a professional NRL player and wanting to watch every game or wanting to talk about it and get around it and kind of looking at what's happening in other teams and other players. There's nothing wrong with that. And Sowie, for me, is all about that. He said, if anything, he kind of regrets during his time when he was playing, not watching enough, like
Yeah.
not taking in and learning from what was happening in other games, but more focused on himself, which is also fair. And I think that's the reality of it is the pressure is on them as individuals as well. But I think the way Sowie is such a fan at his core makes his opinion all the more interesting because he can bring the perspective of someone who's been through it all. He's been dropped from sides. He's like won incredible things in his career and I think he's just experienced all of it. And that for me makes his opinion so legit.
Yeah.
And Guru froths it as well. He absolutely loves it.
Two things with Sowie. When I
Yeah.
hear him and Guru talk, it just feels like two mates in a pub sharing a beer. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
That's
Like,
why I don't interrupt. I'm like, I'm not going to interrupt these two. They're just having a nice old time, having a yarn. Um, and yeah, they're so dribbly.
Yeah.
They're so incredibly dribbly, and they have the most niche conversations, and they think of things I would never think of. But it makes for such good content.
Yeah. And the last person that I actually interviewed for the podcast, head coach of the Steelers, who
Yeah.
obviously sent players up to the NRL first grade for Sowie.
Yeah.
And he just talked about his footy brain just being like
Incredible footy
through the
brain.
roof.
He actually had a go at me about an hour ago in the WhatsApp saying that I'm not contributing enough. So
ouch.
I said, sorry, Sowie, but my WhatsApp is for all my ethnic family chats. So every time I open the app, I get overwhelmed. But I was like, I promise I'll give you a full 80 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Segueing on for the rugby league, kind of back to what we're already talking about, but you've interviewed some amazing people in your career. One of them being one of my childhood heroes in Ferdinand. You've briefly touched on this story before with me, but like how'd that whole thing like come about?
Yeah, that was wild. That was one of those very opportunistic moments where you have to just jump on things when they come up. Basically, he was out in Australia working with an app that had just launched, and Marcello and Claude's kind of teed it up, and they said, guys, we've got like a 15-minute window to interview him. Can we all be here on this day at this time, blah, blah, blah. And who's going to say no?
I was going to say, you're not going to miss that for the world.
No. So Olam wasn't there. I believe he was overseas at the time, but we were like, bro, I'm sorry. We have to do this.
What a paradox. Upon me gone back.
Yeah, I know. So funny.
Yeah.
So it was just Claude and I in the end. And we just took advantage of all the time. We had to bring everything in. So they gave us the location in the city somewhere. We brought in all our recording equipment, this and that, and they had a little set. So we just used that and just smashed out the interview. So we tried to ask as much as we could without doing too much. But he was so cool. He's so humble, so well dressed. He smelled great. Like he was exactly what I expected he would be. And it was cool because we had the likes of Stan Sport and Optus Sport and all these guys all around us, and then the Born Offside show. We were like, guys, this is cool. Like we're in the mix. And I think you're seeing even more of that these days, where you do have your podcasters and your independent creators in those spaces with broadcasters. And we definitely weren't the first to do it, but it was my first experience not being there with an Optus Sport. We were there like for ourselves.
Yeah. I was going to say that's surely like a little bit weird for you. Like obviously still having a relationship with Optus.
Yeah, it was pretty much, I was still working, very actively still working there at the time. And so was Claude's. So we walked in there and we were like, oh, hi. And they were like, oh, hi. How did you tee this up? And it was just one of those ones where we were just gassed to be there, but it did feel a little weird.
Yeah, for sure. And then from there, like, I think I can confidently say that you were the first person to interview Sam Kerr at the Women's World Cup. Would I be right in saying that?
I think definitely one of the first after her, when she made her, Women's World Cup debut, because it didn't happen for quite a few games. And that was a mad experience. It was really cool. So I interviewed her a couple of times during the tournament, but it was that one interview that Optus Sport, I remember they clipped it up straight away. And put it out on social media because it might have been one of the first. Yeah.
Sorry, these are really annoying me.
No, that's all right.
I'm plugging these.
Oh. If it's working, it's working.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's been long enough. I remember being in the zone and seeing you interview her, and I'm like, would that be the first time?
It's definitely one of I hadn't thought about it, to be honest, but it might have been one of the first.
Funny story was I was working the pitch the day when she got subbed on against Denmark. And the camera, like it's her panning and like putting the shirt on as it pans. It's just like you just see me in the back of it, and so I'm like me, my little fanboy. Like I'm like, oh my god,
what were you doing?
I was just in my volunteer gear, like standing my post on the corner, waiting like for the photographers at full time, like type thing. Yeah,
Cold.
So good.
I love that.
But yeah, as you said, 40 days tournament mode type thing. That whole experience, even for me, who was lesser involved than you, but you literally following around the Matildas making social media content. Like it
was really cool. Yeah. Because initially you don't know Optus Sport had the rights and everything, but it's up to their producers and stuff to work out how are they actually going to cover these games. And so they made the call to have a broadcast team follow the Matildas' journey. So obviously in the initial games, hit it again.
It's fine.
In the initial games where it's set in stone, we knew where we were going to be. So we were predominantly based in Brisbane because the girls were training out of Brisbane. And so we were based up there, and then we would fly down for the given games. And then as soon as it got to the nitty gritty where, okay, if we win this, we go here. If Denmark win this, then we could go there, trying to figure all of that out. We just went with the flow of it. But it was a lot of flying back and forth, Brisbane, Melbourne, Sydney here and there. Yeah, a lot of time in Brizzy.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, I actually didn't know they were exclusively training out of Brisbane. Well, not maybe exclusively, but majority of the time.
So they were based out of Brisbane, yeah. So it meant that, pretty much after every game, they would have to get back to Brisbane.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Especially, did they have their most games in Sydney? I feel like they played most of their games, especially when it got to the round of 16.
Yeah, I think
because they played Denmark in Sydney. They played England in Sydney.
Yeah. And there were a few of those where we were able to stay back.
Yeah.
So I stayed at home a few nights, which was really nice. And then you'd be like back in Brizzy, this and that and whatever. Yeah. It was you're just in a different mode.
Yeah.
I had no social life. Like my social life was Amy Chapman, Mark Schwarzer and Isabel Coots. And it was that team that I was with, and we had so much fun. But yeah, it's one of those things that at the time you're just so in it that I reflected a lot after on what a crazy experience it was.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of those names that obviously we spoke about, Mark Schwarzer, obviously the most capped Socceroo ever. Like,
what a guy.
Like Premier League titles, like, played like record number of appearances. Like,
but you wouldn't know it.
He's like one of like 11 Premier League players to make over 500 appearances. Like, how crazy that is?
Yeah.
Like
it's also the longevity of his career.
Insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and he's so cool. Honestly, I loved having him around.
Yeah.
He's great company. He can have a good joke. Like his banter is fantastic. Doesn't take himself too seriously, but he also knows when to switch it on. Like I think he's such a professional at what he does. And even those few opportunities I got to present alongside Mark Schwarzer.
Change yourself, man.
Are you for real? Yeah. Are you for real?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes I look back on that because it is, it's edging 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
When we're in July, it'll be 2 years.
Insane.
That in itself is mind-boggling, but it's so long ago now that I have to remind myself that it happened.
Yeah.
But then every now and again, Mark Schwarzer will like reply to a story or like a photo, and I'm like, I actually made some Mark Schwarzer.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
That's cool.
In the little click.
Yeah.
Even I had a chat with Mark Schwarzer. I was like, once again, I was standing on the field. I think it was that Denmark game actually.
Yeah.
And I was meant to be standing in this particular spot, and I just see him like with the cameraman packing up, and he's just on his phone. I'm like, if I don't say something, I'm going to regret this for the rest of my life.
Good on you. I'm glad you did.
Even when you were in the mix zone and you were like getting ready for players to come through, I'm like, if I don't say something, I'm going to regret this.
Yeah.
I'm seriously like in that state of mind. Like I'm
all for it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's obviously you wouldn't do it if someone was in the middle of an interview.
Oh, absolutely.
Say hello and tell people, take the time to say hi to people.
Yeah.
They appreciate it, and you'll never regret saying hi. Yeah. You will regret not acknowledging someone that you wanted to meet.
Yeah,
I think.
Absolutely. This is a bit more of a funny one. But Mark Schwarzer, me, my brother, and my dad, we have this joke. So my brother, he just plays park first grade.
Yeah.
But he's confident he could score 10 out of 10 penalties against a guy like Mark Schwarzer.
Wow, that's confidence.
I know. I told him, I said, you'd be dreaming if you got 5. I told him that. I said, even now, Mark Schwarzer. I said, prime Mark Schwarzer, maybe 2.
Yeah. I mean, it's Mark Schwarzer. Is he serious?
I said that to him. And then he goes, give me Allison and I'll get at least 1. I'm like, come on, mate.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, he's not here. I wish he was. That'd be so funny. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I haven't seen your brother play, but
he's all right. Like
I've got to back Mark Schwarzer here.
Like he played like rep SAP, like junior level. Yeah. And then he just plays first grade at
I'm sure he could get some, right? Like I'm sure, but it's Mark Schwarzer, bro.
Yeah. Exactly. As I've told him. My dad too, and he's just like, nah, backing himself to like
good on you, but forever. You've got to back yourself.
Yeah.
That's what takes you places.
His only piece of like here's why, is like the videos of Ben Foster on YouTube, where he's like,
fair.
where he sees like YouTubers literally slotting it past him. He's like, yeah, if they can do it, I can do it. I'm like, you know what, confident, but
It's not the same.
it's not the same.
It's
Not the same. You're 18.
But
mate.
I appreciate his confidence. I
Yeah,
do.
he's 18. Like he needs to pipe down a bit. But anyway, yeah, on from the World Cup, obviously you worked with Optus doing that, but then that's kind of segued into now. Obviously, Claude's working with SBS, but you made an appearance doing
That was really fun.
the weekly football wrap.
Yeah. So Claude's had to go away quite early into the show, and he asked me to host in his place, which of course I said absolutely I would. And the format is so I don't underestimate how talented Claude's is, because the format is extremely difficult. So it's filmed as if it's live, and you make your way through all of the highlights essentially.
That's so sick.
So you kind of want to talk through what you're seeing, and then also introduce games and be creative with it. So they do have different segments and stuff that you throw to, but I mean, Claude's created that show, and it definitely is so in line with his talents and his ability to, well, I mean, he's got so much knowledge in his head that he doesn't need to prep like the average person. But I really enjoyed the experience myself. And I think obviously growing up, being ethnic, not even needing to be ethnic, but just growing up in the football world, to have anything to do with SBS is always really, really cool, because for me, as much as I love up the sport, you can't disagree that SBS were kind of the first to do it. And so they've got that like legacy piece. And so it's really fun to be involved in any capacity with them.
Yeah. When like even me, when I started getting into football, it was like the early 2010s probably. I was probably about 7 or 8 years old. And SBS back then, not so much now, but back then they were like the guys. Like you were like, you watch your football, international, domestic.
But that was the same for me. I didn't watch football much before those times either. I didn't grow up in a football household. So it was kind of like after a few World Cups realizing, oh no, I actually really like this sport. And so trying to find opportunities and ways to watch it. And it was always SBS. So
yeah, for sure. On World Cups, well, the men's World Cup and the women's Asian Cup, are you looking to?
Oh, I would love to be involved. In any capacity. It goes without saying. I think obviously right now I'm clearly doing a lot in the league space, but that's because we're in Australia and that's where the opportunity is. And I think anyone, and you may find this yourself, because that's the journey that you're on as well. There will be times where you have to focus on one more than the other.
For sure.
But I think in a dream world, I'm doing both. And obviously, you know, the women's Asian Cup, like I'm Lebanese.
And we're hosting it as well. Like
I would love to be involved. That would mean a lot. So inshallah.
Yeah, for sure. And with obviously all your football stuff that you've done, would you say there's one pinpoint moment where you're like, that was cool? Like one, obviously you worked the Women's World Cup, but was there one moment in that or one moment you've done outside of that and you're like, that was like definitely like for me?
It's a really good question. I think those mixed zone interviews, because I didn't expect to do them. So for context, I got thrown in to do those because they realized the broadcast team was actually short a person. And my job contractually was social media based. It wasn't to be on the broadcast. I was available for it, but it wasn't a need to. And so when the producer came up to me and said, Kat, we'd like you to do the mixed zone interviews. Basically, they kind of say however many they want to get that day, and it'll be totally dependent on who stood out in the game. They're never locked in until literally 15 minutes before the game ends. So you don't know who you're going to talk to. You have to think of your questions very quickly based off of the context of the game and what actually happens. But they threw me in to do those, and you interview as if it's live. They roll the camera. You have Steph Catley or Sam Kerr or Mary Fowler come through, and you have your interview. And then they walk off to the next scheduled interview. So it's a really fun experience, and I think things like that for me were really important because they give you the confidence to go, you know what, when I am thrown in those positions, I'm more than capable. But it's also a really fun thing to look back on and go, that challenged me, but in like the best way possible. And now it's constantly chasing a little bit of that adrenaline. And that's why I enjoy doing live events and hosting and that type of stuff. I love when things you have one shot and you just got to get it right. Because I think it's far more difficult than than trying to get the perfect read.
Yeah, for sure.
I love the challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on top of that, when you were in there and I'm like, oh, like I know she knows exactly what she's doing. She looks so comfortable, like everything. And then I remember you telling me, no, that was the first time I've ever done that. And I'm like,
no, I was so, look, I don't think nervous is the right, it's nervous and anxious, but in the best way, because you're like, I was so stoked to be told this is your opportunity to do this. So all I wanted to do was smash it. And nerves are important because they mean you care.
That's what I always say to myself.
Like if you're not nervous, then
it's not you don't care, but it's like when you do have nerves, you know you do care.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's also like, you get less nervous the more experienced you are, but there will be things that rattle you.
Yeah, for sure.
And even if you've done something 1,000 times, like last week, I kid you not, I have produced hundreds of episodes now for Guru. And we sit down and I'd like run out of the studio and I'd come back in and he had started. And I was like, oh, okay. Like he must have quickly recorded. And so I shut the curtain, just let him do his thing. And then when he was done, I went in and I looked down and I go, none of that recorded. The recording button wasn't on. And that is just a reminder. No matter how many times you've done this stuff, you can make the most basic mistake and it will throw you. I was rattled for the rest of the day. Rattled. Because I thought as a producer, I should have walked in and I should have checked that it was a recording and I didn't. And like, okay, that's not a live interview, but that's somebody relying on you to do a job. And it doesn't matter how simple it is, like you can make mistakes. And sometimes you need those little moments to kind of like, humble isn't the right word, but it is a sense of humbling you. It's reminding you that you can't do B if you've not done A. Like you really have to just remember just to do the stuff that matters the most. So I feel like I'm constantly, I get nervous even about like a recording button. Like I empathize with running a show and like all the things that you have to think about because that's usually me. And that like Sowie's sitting there and Guru's sitting there and if something doesn't sound good, like it's on me. So as much as I like presenting, I also love this stuff because it keeps me really switched on. And it does have the capacity to rattle you as much as live TV can rattle you.
No, and even me, like even literally doing this, like I said, I bought this piece of equipment last week. It's the first time I've run it with a podcast. The gut wrenching feeling, you're like, oh my God, what if it doesn't go to plan? Even the last person, as I said, I interviewed the Steelers coach. We had a 2-hour interview. It was a really, really long one. Like he has like such a big background in the rugby league scene, especially grassroots. And I go to my phone, wasn't recording. But what happened was I didn't have it on Do Not Disturb or airplane mode or something like that. And it cut the recording. Only the last 15 minutes I lost of it. So I saw still like an hour 40 I got of it. And when I went around there, I literally almost fell on my knees. 2 hours of me sat with him here, talking about rugby league, talking about him coaching Matt Burton when he was 12 years old, like him talking about working in the Penrith pathways when Andrew Webster first got there. Like it was just like some of them, like it was gold, like and just all gone.
Yeah, see, I completely understand. And I think it makes you so much better at what you do, like wherever your journey goes. And I did want to ask you, like throw it back at you, like where you would like to take this. But I think you'll find that all of these, call it mistakes, whatever you want to call it, but all of these learnings that you have along the way will make you so much better at being a presenter or being like whatever it is that you want to do. I like that as a presenter when I'm on set for different things, I know what other people are doing. I know what their responsibilities are. And so it makes you far more aware of the bigger picture. You don't just walk in there and read a script and leave. It's like there's this holistic understanding of how it all happens. And I think it's as much as my goal is to land a broadcast role and just focus entirely on that, everything that I'm doing now is just making me better at that. Do you know what I mean?
Even me, like I currently work in what you'd call broadcast.
Yeah.
news, and I was uploading a video to YouTube, and I like cut the clip, but I cut it during the ad break. So you can hear all the off-air audio of like the journos like yip yapping with each other, like,
That's
"Oh,
funny. I'm not
how's the
gonna
wife
lie.
and kids, blah blah blah." And then next minute, my boss comes in
Also.
like 20 minutes after I upload it, and she goes, "Josh, you need to take that down from YouTube." Blah 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 blah.
Oh
I'm like,
gosh.
oh no! I'm like, I'm so sorry, and like my stomach, my heart was just
Oh
pounding for
yeah.
like half hour straight, waiting for someone else to say something to me. Nothing obviously came of it, but I was like literally like
Oh my goodness.
blood boiling type thing. Like, how could I be so stupid to do like
It's so fair though. I another one more recently. It's funny because we play into it a little bit with Guru. Like he's such a chill dude
Yeah.
that if we make a mistake on air or if something comes up, he'll be like, "Nah, we'll just play into it, don't
Yeah.
worry." But I upload it. We do team list Tuesdays
Yes.
at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday. Everything comes out, like all the team lists come out, and it's our job to basically, we've made it our job to have it up by like 4:30,
Yeah.
5 o'clock. So pretty soon into it being out there, you can get Guru's interpretation of team lists and what do you need to know.
Quick turnaround.
Very quick turnaround. So there was a time last season, it was the first big mistake I made where I had set it for Wednesday.
Oh no.
So we both had places to go after work. So we left, and it was about 10 a.m. I think on Wednesday that Guru finally checked the comments because he's just like, he's got a life outside of all of this stuff as well. And someone had said, "Oh, Cat's in a bit of trouble because it's premiering at like 5 p.m. on Wednesday." So I'd set it 24 hours late, and it became a bit of a joke about Team List Wednesdays.
Yeah.
But people make mistakes, and it doesn't matter how many times
Yeah.
you've done this stuff, like it will happen. And I think authenticity it's really important, but also accountability.
Yeah.
Like if I make a mistake, I'll own up to it
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
who am I trying to fool? God knows that it was me.
Yep.
So that's all that matters. But yeah, I think it's pretty funny to hear these things, and like
Yeah.
it's a nice little reminder that
Happens to everyone.
it happens to everyone.
Even literally you get some of the like even people that I work with and they're like really, really high up, and you just see like just simple things, and it's like
It's the simple thing.
yeah.
The scheduled date and time. Like you can know, no matter how perfect a video can be, you can set the wrong date and time and it doesn't feel so perfect anymore.
Literally.
So
But yeah, and the final question that I have, and I asked you this last time, and we kind of shortened the answer because you said you could talk forever about it, is what are your goals for your professional life for 2025 and just a few of the years ahead? Don't have to go into everything, just a few little things.
I think for me, I'll just off the top, I'm very grateful for where I'm at and what my day-to-day looks like and the community that I have around me. And realistically, if nothing was to ever change professionally, I would still feel really satisfied with what I've achieved and I guess what I'm currently doing. But I think there'll always be a little itch to land a broadcast role. And I think the more time I spend in league, the more I see myself working in league.
Yeah.
I love football and I always will. And I think there's so much opportunity with tournaments here in Australia. But whether or not you can land a full-time broadcast gig is a different story. And I think the right people right now are in those jobs as well, for sure. Like I absolutely love Tara Rushton and what she brings to the A-League, and same can be said for Neve Owens, and there's just so many people and I adore them. And I also think there's a huge opportunity to bring talent in that have played the game as well.
Yeah.
But for me personally, if I was to just say like a dream, it would be a broadcast role for like a Fox or a Nine covering, or whoever has the NRL rights in the future.
Yeah.
But it would be to do stuff in that space because I think I've really found a space that I enjoy the content, but and my passion for the sport just grows every week.
Yeah.
And I care so much more than I thought I ever would.
Yeah.
But I'm also very confident in what I know. And I think that's something that I'd love to really channel into something one day.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that is all we have, unless there's anything you wanted to bounce back onto me, or I don't know.
Well, no, what's your dream? Where do you see all of this going for yourself? So you mentioned that you like how I do kind of cross code stuff. Is that the goal for
Yeah,
you?
like at least in the last 6 to 12 months, I'm really big on my UFC, like MMA. Like I
Nice.
really love that sport. But my roots are with football. And I've grown up in a rugby league household.
Mm.
My mum, like, diehard South Sydney fan.
Oh,
Yeah, she's not
I'm in
here.
I'm in
She's
a
in
safe
yeah, she's
space.
in Japan at the moment, unfortunately. So, but yeah, she's not here. And my dad, like, grew up in the Shire, hence I go for Cronulla.
Yeah.
Funny story with that. My mum actually, she like used to dress me up in all the bunnies clothes when I was little, and I don't know. I'm like, no, I want to go for Dad's team. Like when I was like 4 or 5.
You broke her heart.
Yeah, it probably broke her heart. But do you know what? This is really immoral of me, but so I go for Cronulla, but I go. So when it came to like Origin time, I go for my mum's Origin team, and she goes for Queensland.
Mm.
So I go for Queensland when in reality I just shouldn't. Like I just
That actually makes less sense.
exactly everyone says this, and it does. But when the one thing I'm firm on is picking and sticking. You do not change your team under any circumstance. So yeah, like since 5, I went for Queensland.
Yeah.
I've got a Queensland hat over there. But yeah, just it's weird. I always get bagged out for it from my mates, obviously, as you know what, rightfully so, probably. But yeah, we're back to where I was saying. Taking all this, I'd like it to be this, if I'm being honest, but probably similar to yourself, a broadcast
Yeah.
role. I think working for an exclusively sports network.
Yeah.
So like obviously 9 have the NRL rights, but like I like something like you said, Fox or Optus or even like an ESPN, like
Yeah.
someone like that. That probably would be the dream for me. But I like that in those roles you can dip in and out of different sports, much like you do with your obviously your work and the freelance stuff.
Yeah. It is a lot of fun being able to dip in and out. And that's the one thing about, I have had offers for jobs that would make life far less freelancy. I would be kind of selling off that freedom that I currently have. And I think I'm willing to do that for the right role. And also when you have, the likes of an Optus Sport, I'm very fortunate to have had all the experiences that I have with them.
Yeah.
And if they were to turn around and offer me like a really great role, maybe, you'd go back to the drawing board on what you're currently doing. But I think that's where having that cross code experience is really good because I'm able to compare the different worlds.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
go, where do I actually see myself fitting in the most? So yeah, it will be a luxury if that happens, and God willing it does, and that's obviously what I'm working towards. But like I said, I think if nothing was to change, I'd still be like so content with what I do and the community that I have around me, and they make my life really fun, and I love what I do.
Yeah.
But I also think you're so much more than your job,
Yeah, absolutely.
your life is and I actually remember, and I really like that you asked me this for your assignment.
Yeah.
You'd said personal goals as well.
Yes, I did say
which
personal
I think
goals.
is really nice, and I don't have to go into those. But I think it was a nice reminder after, talking to you for an hour about like all the things that I have done professionally. It was really nice to reflect on your personal life and how no matter how much you achieve professionally, for me, like life is about people and family and my faith and all the things that make me who I am. And they're things that make you better at your job.
Yeah.
And having a really great support system. And like, you said, you've set up here and your mum supports you doing it. And like, you've realized that every step you make in your career, when you're backed by people that love you and care about you, it makes you so much better at what you do. But it also, I think, for me, makes me just grateful for the journey that I've had so far, and knowing that my parents have supported me financially when things are uncertain. They've, never said, quit what you're doing and go find a full-time job. And like the uncertainty is not good, Kat. Like you need security. Like they've never been like that. They've always just said, no, like there's something there, keep at it.
Yeah.
And so I think, like for me, obviously professional life is one thing, but personal life is so, so important. And making sure that like you have balance and you give energy to that as well, I think will in turn only make your working life better as well.
Yeah. The parent thing that you just said really resonates with me as well. Like obviously you said like my mum lets me fill this space and do the podcast here, but also on top of that, like where I work right now, I'm currently employed casually. So when the work is there, it's there. When it's not almost similar to like freelance. And sometimes I'm like, oh, there's not much work. What should I do? Blah, blah, blah. My mum's just like, keep at it. You've been there for like 4, 5, 6 months, like just keep
Nothing,
just
exactly.
keep going. She's like, something will open up, something will happen, blah blah blah. You're enjoying it. Don't think just because
Yeah.
there's no work,
Yeah.
So even when you said like they back you financially, like I still live at home, obviously,
Yeah.
like all that stuff. So it's not like, I'm 18, they forced me to move out. No, they're like, no, whilst you're studying this, that, and the other.
Yeah. No, it's so true. I love my parents. My friends always joke. They're like, nobody talks about their parents as much as you do. They're my best friends. Like they know everything that they need to know about my life,
Yeah.
and they've supported me through everything. And like even the moving to Spain thing.
Yeah.
A lot of Lebanese dads would say no to that. My dad understood that there was a much bigger picture there, and that was really the catalyst for a lot of the things that I experienced. So yeah, I think you can add there for, goals is also just to continue building those personal relationships and enjoying balance in your life as well.
Funnily enough, that you said that, it's almost struck a note in my brain.
Yeah.
One of my goals is I want to do work overseas, much like how you have,
Do
but
it.
I want to work in London. I actually
Yeah.
have family in
Go
London,
for
so
it.
like I have a really close relationship with one of my cousins in London. I've only actually met her like twice, but
You gotta go.
but the first day I like met her, it was like we just like it was like
You click.
I was like, oh my god, like
Genetics are crazy.
yeah, insane.
Yeah.
So
Do it.
like I'd love to go to London and work, especially for like a Sky Sport or like a DAZN or someone like that, who obviously
Absolutely.
have like a lot of the sport coverage over there. But yeah, similar to how you moved to Spain, obviously.
Yeah. It's the one thing I say, if you've got an itch, just go scratch it
Yeah.
because the itch won't go away.
Yeah.
Sometimes the itch becomes like I wish I had done this, and now I'm married with 3 kids and it's a bit harder to do that. I'm not married with 3 kids. That's what I meant. You will be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if you've got that desire to do it, you'll never regret going.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like when you see someone and you want to go up and say hi. You'll never regret the fact that you did it. So what if you don't get the response that you wanted? And so what if you don't end up like living in London? You can move back.
Exactly.
But you don't want to regret not going.
Yeah. I always said it probably wouldn't be something I could see myself doing inevitably, like for the foreseeable future, but
Yeah.
I'd love to do 2 or 3 years for sure.
Absolutely. Why not?
Maybe come back, visit once whilst I'm there, like, you know what I mean? Like that type
Go
of thing.
for it. Yeah, I back you.
But yeah, that was a really wholesome kind of
So wholesome.
wholesome
I like
kind of
wholesome
end
chats.
to the chat. But yeah, I had nothing else to add unless you did.
No, that's all
Awesome.
good.
Thank you for listening to the All Access Pass on Check the Score. Thank you, Kat, for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And we'll see you next time.